All right, my friends, welcome back to Frogboy X1 Gaming. I'm Andrew, and today I'm going to do my 10-day review on the 4070 MSI Ventus 3, I believe it is. So if you guys like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's go ahead and talk about this thing for a minute. So, I know a lot of people were pretty vocal in the comments section when I told them that it was going to be the MSI Ventus 3, telling me that this is the cheapest card that you can buy in terms of build quality for NVIDIA. And, you know, I mean, this right here kind of reminds me of the 3060 Ti that I got in my pre-built. Nothing special. I mean, it barely did like a... It barely had like a... like RGB on the thing for it. And that one was a Intel, I believe. I believe that was a build by Intel or whatever for that specific HP pre-built that I had. Yeah, so overall, like, build quality of this MSI Ventus 3, not like super heavy duty, but I mean, it gets the job done. It's definitely plastic, but it's got, you know, plenty of cooling in here. It's not super big and not super bulky. You could probably get this card into some pretty small builds. It is a little bit long. It's nowhere near as long as either of my AMD cards, that's for sure. Those things are monsters compared to this. So yeah, you are getting a pretty decent, you know, I mean, a pretty small piece of hardware. And if you look right here, you only get like it only has a one. Let me get over here a little bit closer. It has one 8-pin, so you can just plug in the one 8-pin for that. So therefore, you could probably run this on a 650 watt power supply, and it would probably push this pretty good. As far as thermals and all of that stuff go for this card, very, very quiet. Stays pretty dang cool. You don't hear it ramp up too much with the 3 fans. I'm actually pretty impressed with the overall quality of this, of the overall, you know, physical quality and performance of this 4070. Like, I don't really have any complaints about this. And like I said, you know, I mean, like, a lot of people were already giving me pushback for buying this specific model. And here's the thing, man. When I'm going to the store and I'm buying this stuff, I'm buying it as a consumer. I'm a consumer just like you. I'm going out, I'm, you know, buying the product. I'm going to Best Buy and I'm finding exactly what they got. And you got to understand that I'm pretty new to PC, so I don't know all of the brands. I haven't been a PC gamer for 20 years, and I haven't went through every single brand to know which brand I actually like the most. So when it comes to buying something like this, I don't care. Like, I'm buying a 4070. That's what I'm buying. I'm not buying you know what I mean? So, like, as long as it's a 4070 and it performs like a 4070, I don't have a problem with that. Like, I'm not brand loyal. I don't really care. The reason why I got another XFX for my 7800 XT is because they had that, and I already had an XFX 7900 XT. So I was like, yeah, dude, that thing performs really well. So yeah, I'll go ahead and grab another one of those. So it's nothing. It has nothing to do with brand loyalty. I buy all of my stuff locally. Actually, the 7900 XT was the first card I ever bought from Amazon, but I normally go to Best Buy to buy all of my stuff. So that there is, you know, I mean, like, luck of the draw or whatever. So I've had 2 AMD cards. They both perform very, very well. So now we got the 4070, because a lot of people were telling me that I'm not being fair with my overall experience when it comes to NVIDIA versus AMD, due to my prior 3080 experience. And I kind of agree with them. I totally agree with them, actually. So I wanted to pick this up and I wanted to give it a shot. So I've played around with this for about 10 days. In those 10 days, I've had the AMD cards back in there for a total of maybe 24 hours to try different things. Last weekend, I spent a lot of time going back and forth, you know, for the new Avatar game. And then I was like, yeah, I just want to put my 7900 XT back in there and play it. But I woke up the next day. I put the 4070 back in there. I've been using the 4070 all the way up until a little bit earlier this morning, when I found out that What's this? Like a Dragon Gaiden has FSR3 support, so I went ahead and I threw the 7800 XT back in there so that I could have this out for this review so that we could talk about it. Now, I want to talk about like performance and, you know, some of the you know, the features like DLSS, the ray tracing performance, all of that stuff. What I'm getting out of this card. Now this card did cost me $81 or $91 more than I paid for the 7800 XT. And that was the XFX model. Usually they're like $549 or something. So I paid about $91 more for this specific card. And the overall price to performance for that. Now, I don't use any of the CUDA features. I'm not using any of that kind of stuff. I'm not using any of the work, like any of the work processors for any of that stuff. Like I don't feel like I'm using that. When I get on my my Cyberlink Power Director, the performance that this card gives me versus either of my AMD cards is really similar. So it's not like I'm gaining any benefit there for rendering out my videos or being able to get in there and do anything with those. It's pretty much about the same. In terms of like playing, like actually playing games, because that's what the thing is about the most, is how is the gaming experience on the 4070. And at 1440p, I personally think that it is, I think that it's good. Like, I'm not having any problems with that. I'm not feeling like, oh man, I wish this card could perform better. I'm not thinking about any of that while I'm playing around on it. I'm not having any negative, any overall negative experience with the card per se. Like, everything I've thrown at it, it's done really well. If I'm playing RTS games, it's well in the hundreds. Well over in the hundreds, and I'm testing everything at maximum quality. So if I was to like drop settings down to like maybe the high preset or maybe even medium preset, I guarantee that I could get more performance out of this card. Definitely for a lower, especially with the lower power. with the lower power supply, like 200. I think it's like what, 200 watts. It's like a 200 watt power. Like TDP, or yeah, TDP that this card has. So I mean, it is sipping juice and giving me like a pretty dang good amount of performance for this particular card. And I'm like, wow, dude, that is pretty impressive. I'm not gonna lie, it is pretty impressive. When it comes down to like using the other features like DLSS or, you know, ray tracing or something, I'm actually going to give this card some props for the way it handles ray tracing at 1440p. Now, I've made some pretty dumb claims over the last, you know, 6 months or whatever when it comes to ray tracing. Let me be 100% clear though. I'm still not 100% to the point where like I've got to have ray tracing. It to me, it's like, yeah, it looks good, but we're going to get into this a little bit. Like we're going to take this apart a little bit. Okay, so with ray tracing, I've noticed with DLSS, when I use DLSS and I turn on ray tracing, I lose image quality. And you might not see this. You might like the way that it looks overall, but I feel like I lose fine detail when I enable that. And for me, the trade-off of image quality versus, you know, what I would get in performance wise playing with or without it, sometimes it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, I like the way games feel when they're smooth and they're running at higher FPS. Like, I like that a lot. But I technically can still play games running at 30 frames per second. Like, I can still manage to do that. So when it comes to ray tracing, you know, and path tracing, I know that's like the new buzzword when it comes to the NVIDIA cards. Like I get it. I 100% I get it. I know that people get excited about that stuff, and it is pretty exciting. To be completely honest with you, it is pretty exciting to see the future of the medium getting pushed forward in a way that actually benefits. But to be completely honest with you, when I'm playing something like Alan Wake 2 or Cyberpunk, it is noticeable like when you first get in, but then you get used to it pretty quickly, and it doesn't really and it doesn't really give you that overall, in my opinion, with this 4070 anyways, I don't think it gives you that experience that that you would think it would be giving you, because it is pretty subtle in a lot of areas, like especially on Cyberpunk 2077 and Alan Wake 2. It is pretty subtle. So when you're actually looking at it, and then it just starts to fade away. And I've noticed in Alan Wake 2, I also lose a little bit of image quality when I kick on, the ray tracing, the and the frame generation and DLSS. I lose some image quality, and I really appreciated the way Alan Wake 2 ran on my 7900 XT. I wouldn't trade that for the path tracing and ray tracing any day of the week. I had well over 100 frames a second. It was a nice, smooth experience. It looked freaking incredible. The very, very beautiful looking game, and it just ran smooth. I wouldn't trade that for what I get out of the 4070. Now, if I had like a 4080 maybe, or a 4090, and I was playing that and I was able to hit, those higher frame rates that I was getting with Alan Wake 2 on the 7900 XT, maybe that would be a different story. Because in my experience with the 3080 and all of this ray tracing stuff, is it doesn't matter where you're at. When you turn it on, that's the image quality that you get. Like the biggest thing that fluctuates is the frame rate. So if you're on a 3080 and you're getting 30 frames per second, or say you're on a 4090 and you're getting 60 frames per second, the ray tracing and everything still looks exactly the same. Like there's no visual difference. When I play games on my 7900 XT and then I throw my 7800 XT in there, the visuals don't change. They stay the same. Like the visuals do not increase with more power. Like you get, when you set it at Ultra, you get Ultra. And it looks the same across the cards. The only thing that fluctuates is performance. So a 4070 is perfectly okay for looking at like the ray tracing, the path tracing, all of that stuff. I do get a lot of people that still tell me, you should have got a 4070 Ti, or you should wait till the 4. No. The whole point of this was to buy a card that was at about the same price range. I mean, technically for $500, I probably should have got a 4060 Ti, if we're being honest, in the same price range. But I decided to go with the 4070. I feel like that's a little better. I didn't want to go too much higher. I really didn't want to pay $800 for a 4070 Ti. I just feel like that would have been irresponsible, at least on my part, for like comparing, like in comparisons. Like I could have compared that to the 7900 XT, but what we're trying to do is look at the mid-range when it comes to these GPUs. That's what we're looking at. Now, I do believe that both the 7800 XT and the 4070 both deliver a compelling experience at 1440p. In some games, you are definitely going to get higher rasterized performance out of your AMD card, whereas you're obviously going to get better performance out of ray tracing on the 4070. Like there's just no way, no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But I want to say, like, the overall user experience of the 4070 has actually been pretty decent. Now that I understand Control Panel a little bit better, it's easier to get in there, set everything up, look for things. I am looking, some of these things up, as I'm going to try to figure out what I can do. But I still feel like I have more control on the AMD Adrenalin software to get in there and utilize certain things, like virtual super resolution versus DSR. I like virtual super resolutions like better. I can take that all the way up to as high as 8K, whereas on the DSR, it's only letting me do 2.25x increase, so I'm only able to get it up to about 4K. Which in turn does give me a pretty decent image quality, but at the same time, I just feel like virtual super resolution on a graphics card like the 7900 XT that actually has the VRAM to push higher resolutions, because that's a big thing. Once you start going into 4K, 6K, 8K, you're going to use more VRAM just for going up a notch in the overall resolution. So with the 7900 XT, I definitely get better performance than both the 7800 XT and the 4070. But yeah, in that essence, I'm still much more happy with the AMD, with the way AMD does that a little better. But this really isn't an AMD video. This is about the 4070. The 4070 has absolutely surprised me. I did not expect it to perform as well as it does against the 7800 XT. I'm not at a point where I would call it a tie, but I would call it. I would definitely, yeah. I don't know. Maybe a tie. Maybe a tie. If you want like the honest, brutal, brutal truth about it, yeah, it pretty much is a tie. If I turn off, let's just be real when it comes to PC gaming. If I turn off the frame rate counter, I can't tell the difference. Honestly, I can't tell a difference. I can't tell a difference in performance. The only thing that I can really tell a difference in is ray tracing quality and the quality of FSR versus DLSS. That's the only thing that I can really tell a difference is if I'm not using a frame rate counter, and that's the way it should be. Honestly, to be able to tell you the truth. So when it comes to if you should choose the 4070 versus a 7800 XT. It really does just come down to user experience and features at this point for me. To be completely honest with you, I do feel, and this is with my own from my own experience with these two cards. I don't care what any other freaking internet YouTuber says about these cards. This is from my own experience, paying for these with my own money. If you do have a frame rate counter on, yes, the 7800 XT definitely pulls ahead of the 4070 a lot more than you would expect. So I mean there is that. But if you turn the frame rate counter off, man, you're not going to be able to really know the difference. You know, if you're running at 65 frames a second on the 4070 and you've got like 72 on the 7800 XT, like you're not gonna notice that. You're not going to notice that unless you have a frame counter on, and then you're going to feel like, oh man. Seriously, man, we are literally within 15%. We're literally within 15%, and 15% is literally like 15 frames out of 100. If you've got 100 frames and you're getting 15% less than that, you're getting about 85 frames, which is still very playable at like max settings. Like that's still very playable. So unless you really want, like, I mean, the biggest thing though that you will notice, at 1440p, it's a tie. It's a 100% tie, in my opinion. 1080, I haven't really tested 1080p yet. I will continue to test these throughout the year. 4K is where the 7800 XT moves ahead. It moves ahead. It's got a stronger bus width and it's got more VRAM, so it can push a little bit higher and give you a better overall experience at 4K. So at the 1440p range, it's definitely a tie. It's pretty close. It's within striking distance most of the time. There are some games that perform significantly better on the 7800 XT at 1440p, and there are games that perform better at 1440p when you enable ray tracing and stuff. So it's that right there that kind of evens it out for me. If you like the ray tracing, and you're willing to give up a little bit of rasterized power and say like Ubisoft games or something, and that's mainly the difference. Ubisoft games perform very well on the 7800 XT, whereas the games that are made for the ray tracing features of the 4000 series definitely perform better on the NVIDIA card. So it's like a give or take. Like if you're playing a lot of Ubisoft games, get the 7800 XT. If you're playing a lot of these experimental, I still call them experimental features because I just don't think they're there for 100% there for the mid-range yet. Once you can like throw on a mid-range card and not have to use like upscalers and stuff to be able to utilize that, that's when I'll consider them a little bit more mainstream. But for right now, if you want to utilize the those features from the NVIDIA stack, yeah, dude, like. I don't think, like, if that's your thing, like I think that you would be happy with the 4070. I do think that it can give you a decent enough experience. I mean, the biggest thing is like once we get into this whole year of testing these cards, we're definitely going to find out longevity. We're going to see how these cards stack up, in a month or in 2 months, or as new games start to launch. We'll have Horizon Zero or Horizon Forbidden West in the beginning of the year. Probably sometime we'll have The Last of Us 2 throughout the year. We're going to have we're gonna have some pretty decent games coming out next year that are gonna be pretty heavy on these two GPUs, and we're gonna see how these two GPUs stack up against each other, and I'm really curious to see how this goes. But as it sits right now, 1440p, the main thing that we're testing on this channel is, in my opinion, a tie. It's a tie. So if you go over and you start looking at other features, you know, like as for a streamer or content creator, yes, the broadcast feature is actually pretty cool. Like, it does a pretty decent job. I like that. But in terms of like the productivity apps and everything that I use to create content, like, there's no difference. Like, there's no difference. Like I said, it's a tie. The only one up that I've got is well, in the GeForce Recorder I can do HDR, but I've tried that before and it always came out like just oversaturated in colors. I haven't tried it again lately, but I might be trying it next time I put the card in. I'll try to see if I can get some HDR footage out of that. That's something that I really think AMD needs to work on with the Adrenalin software, with the Relive, is being able to get some HDR recording in there. That would be awesome. I'd really appreciate that if they did, because I would like to put HDR content out without having to buy a whole nother PC and another capture card and all of that stuff just to capture that. But in terms of value for money, 7800 XT is definitely going to pack a very good punch. You are paying a premium for those ray tracing features. You are. You're paying a premium for that. If that's what you want, you are going to pay a premium for that. And at least it works good enough on this 4070 to somewhat make it justifiable for you. I will give it that. It does work good enough on the games that I've tested it on, the ones that are heavily focused on NVIDIA. It does make a big enough difference for you to justify that. So if you can pick one up for what I got it for, I mean, I've seen people saying that they're on sale right now for like $515 or $525. If you can get it cheaper than what I paid for it, I paid $600 for this. If you can get it cheaper than that, definitely it's a lot more worth it. If the closer you can get to the 7800 XT to gain that ray tracing, I think would be the better. So as it sits, I'm perfectly okay with either one of these cards. I think they both do good at 1440p. Jedi Survivor actually feels a little bit more stable on the NVIDIA card. When I turn on the frame gen and all of that stuff, I can actually get it to stable out a little better on that one. And then Forza Motorsport seems to be performing a little bit better on the NVIDIA card. So there are some things, you know, like a little bit of tug of war, give or take, you know. So I'm actually grateful that I have both now, but I still prefer the AMD experience, man. That's just where I'm at. Like, I prefer the overall experience of AMD a lot more, and I feel like I have a lot more. I feel like this card, the 7800 XT, is definitely going to outlast this 4070. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. 1440p anyway. So, all right, my friends, I think that this video is long enough. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching.